Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I am Cal lead coach Melissa, and this week I'm honored to welcome U.S. Army veteran Jason Livingston back to the show. Jason is a retired U.S. Army veteran, Cal athlete, and coach. Today we will be discussing injuries, working through them physically and mentally. And if you guys haven't had the opportunity yet, when we're finished, go check out episode 4 of the Coaches Corner and listen to Jason talk about nutrition. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coaches Corner. Jason, welcome. Thanks for being here again with us.
And I always love coming on a coach's corner, so this is an honor for me.
Wonderful. We're so glad to have you. Let's jump right in, Jason. Would you take some time and kind of talk to us about the injury you've been dealing with for the past couple of months?
Sure. So it started, I think late last June. I started having issues again with my spine. A lot of nerve pain going down into my hip and down through my leg. I started going to physical therapy and came to a point where physical therapy told me that I need to be reevaluated by either ortho or neurosurgery. And shortly after that, I think it was probably about a month later, I actually was getting up in the morning to get ready to get my daughter ready for school. And I literally, all I did was sit up and hung my feet over the edge of the bed. And it just went into excruciating pain. Just unrelenting, brutal pain that I've never felt. Um, so long story short on that, I ended up I had a pinched nerve in my L4, along with spinal compression. So from my L4 to my S1, the spine is compressing down. It's losing those disc spaces in between there. So my spine is just gradually collapsing. So after I went to the emergency room, and after I think it was something like 4 rounds of morphine and 3 rounds of Dilaudid with some steroids and other pain meds. This is back to back. They were able to, get some images done, kind of get the pain a little bit under control. But I was down for, quite a few days after that, just trying to reassess what was going on. So I mean, during that time, it was just there was just so much pain. I couldn't bend over to put my shoes on. I couldn't sit up out of bed. I spent the first, I think, 6 weeks after that laying on the couch. I had to sleep on the couch because I couldn't sleep in the bed. Um, Range of motion was horrible. Sitting for any length of time was just brutal. So I mean, it was just a constant state of pain.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of what I've recently went through, just kind of briefly in a nutshell.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jason. And I know we're
Sure.
gonna we're gonna definitely unpack this a little bit more as we get through the episode, but I want to start by kind of talking about the emotional impact of an injury. Because we definitely know there's a physical component in it, and there's an emotional a toll that it takes too. Um, would you kind of talk to us a little bit about the emotional impact that you saw when this injury came about for you?
Oh, I can tell you from the first moment, whenever I went to the emergency room, I was literally in tears, sitting in the wheelchair as they were pushing me back, and the first thing that was going through my mind is, I'm not gonna stop lifting. It was that there was
Yeah.
no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I knew right then and there. I told myself that I'm not stopping. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. They're gonna have to drag me out of the gym one way or another. It's not happening.
Yeah.
And then of course the other aspect of that was, where I came from, being in a wheelchair to, coming out of a wheelchair, and the doctor's telling me, hey, you need to go back into a wheelchair. I refused to accept it.
Yeah.
So there was a huge emotional, um, I just emotional wall that I hit. Um, you first you go through that, not this again. Then, it was just complete anger. And, I was literally sitting there in disbelief.
Yeah.
So it had a huge emotional impact. And for the first, probably week, um, just sitting there thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Because I can't go back.
Yeah.
I spent, 5 years getting where I'm at now. I can't go back. So it was a huge, just emotional state for, quite a few days after that.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot. And, I can definitely testify. I talked to you quite a bit, especially during those early days. And, you kept stressing that to me, you're not going to stop, you're not going to stop with your training. You're not going back in that wheelchair. So it was incredible, right from the beginning, this mindset that you had with that too. Um, what do you think kind of helped you work through, some of those, like the emotional impact of it, like what kind of helped you work through that?
I would definitely have to say a big part of that was, kind of the lessons learned from being in Catch a Lift. You had this great community support. Yourself, Lynn, the other coaches were all very supportive. The very first time that I jumped on a coaches meeting right after that happened. So just that huge support aspect was a huge positive.
Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, the other things that I've learned, while I've been in Catch a Lift, the mental status. Um, I've been told by multiple doctors that this is something that I have to do. I have to remain physically active for the rest of my life, or I go back into a wheelchair.
Right.
Um, so, just some of those things that I've been through in the past, it was just kind of like, no, I'm not. I refuse.
Yeah.
And then, probably the other part of that was just the anger aspect of it. Sometimes, anger can be a good thing,
Yeah.
as long as it's focused properly.
Right.
Um, so there was a bit of that where it was just like I was angry, I was frustrated, but instead of just switching off, I was like, okay, I need to sit back, I need to
Yeah.
reevaluate where I'm at, and I need to refocus this energy and put it towards something useful versus just
Yeah.
becoming self-destructive.
Right. Oh, 100%. And Jason, let's expand on that a little bit more, because something you've always been very vocal about is the fact that you need to take an active role in your physical and mental health. Could you touch on that a little bit for us, what that means to take an active role in your health?
Yeah, it's been a huge, I think, crisis, within the veteran community as a whole, because every time you go to a provider, 9 times out of 10, the first thing that they recommend is medication.
Yeah.
It's the least invasive. Uh, my guess would be for them, not necessarily for the individual. So anytime that I go and I have a medical issue, I I take a look at what's going on. I really think about what I have going on so that I can explain and express things to the provider.
Right.
If I don't agree with what they say, I'm going to tell them my opinion
Yeah.
and not blow up, but you have to be
Right.
vocal. You
Yep.
have to express, okay, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with taking medication. I don't agree with this, and
Right.
that's okay. You don't have to take medication. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. It's your body. You're the one that lives
Yeah.
with your body. You're the one that lives with the
This is
pain. You're
true.
the one that
Yeah.
lives with the symptoms. So you have to be able to bear that burden, whatever it is, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So ultimately, the decision comes down on you, and that's what I mean by being an active participant in your medical treatment, whether it's mental or whether it's physical. Um, I don't want to recommend that anybody goes off and you Google search all your symptoms and all that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But you can track, you can take a look at things, and you can do some research, but don't put all your eggs in one basket and saying
Yeah.
this is it. but you can certainly express your concerns and your thoughts to your provider. Hey, this is something that I think that it could possibly be. Could we take a look at this?
Yeah.
Instead of just relying on that one person
Right.
who is dealing with 50,000 other people,
Oh,
and
totally.
and
Yeah.
they're not seeing all the symptoms and things that you go through day to day. So that's what I mean whenever I say be an active participant in your care.
Yeah. No, that's true. Thank you for talking to us about that. That's very important. So Jason, you were obviously going through and have gone through a tremendous amount of physical pain with this injury and even injuries in the past, right? Talk to us about how you have handled pain management through this.
This one was hugely different last time. Initially, whenever I was going through my initial recovery quite a few years ago, I had things like spinal injections. I had medications that I was on that were, yes, they were providing some pain relief, but in my mind, looking back, I think, and this is just my speculation, I think that a probable cause, or kind of what was going on, was I couldn't necessarily feel what was going on with my spine. I couldn't feel,
Yeah.
actually what was going on because I had all the medications and everything, and I wasn't
Right.
feeling exactly what was going on. So that kind of allowed me to do a lot more, but it may have caused a little bit more damage in the long run. I wasn't as educated then as I am now as
Right.
far as how to set up programming and things like that. So this time I didn't have any pain meds. That I didn't, except for what I had in the ER. That
Yeah.
was it. I didn't have any over the counter. I didn't have anything. I just kind of went with it. So things like heat and ice were were hugely beneficial,
Yeah.
and a lot of rest, stretching, and for me the most important thing was not giving up on physical activity. So right as soon as I could get into the gym, I was right back at it,
Yeah.
and I was hitting those main lifts, those main staples. Not necessarily how I wanted to,
Right.
but how I could, and finding those adaptations and variations. Because the worst thing that you can do whenever you're dealing with, say a spinal injury, or any other injury for that fact, is to just sit there
Right.
and not do anything.
Yep. So that brings us to a good place here, Jason. Why don't we delve into that a little deeper? Talk to me about reevaluating your training when an injury arises and kind of what that looked like for you.
It was a huge change,
Yeah.
in terms of volume and load. I mean, we were, me and my guys, we were doing 300 plus pound squats for reps. Loading up things like leg press, deadlifts, going heavy, lots of volume, lots of reps, lots of weight. To literally, it was so painful to just lay down on a bench
Yeah.
to lift a 25-pound dumbbell for a dumbbell press.
Yeah.
I was literally in tears, and my one of my partners was having to help me up and down off the bench. So you kind of have to take a look at and say, okay, man, I can't squat 225, or I can't squat 295. Okay, what can I do? So early, I've been adding all these different exercises in at over the past year, anyways. But I've started adding in bands. Start there's so many different ways that you can actually change an exercise, and you can change the workload, so to speak. Instead of say 200 pounds, I can drop it down to 100 pounds, and I can get the same workload out of that, just by manipulating time under tension, rest pause, drop sets, all different kinds of variations that you can add in there. So those are some of the things that I've incorporated into my training program. So getting more out of the exercise than just lifting the weight, and that's something that I've been a huge fan of, is working the weight, or working the muscle but not working the weight. And what I mean by that is you don't have to push 200 pounds, 300 pounds to necessarily work that muscle.
Yeah.
That may not be what it needs.
Right.
And you just get into that whole ego lifting. And I still catch myself doing it from time to time. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
One of the things, as far as squatting, which as we all know, is a huge load on the spine and on the hips, and that's something that I have been directly dealing with within my injury. I've added in a Spanish squat, which is it's very similar to a sissy squat. I don't know if you guys have seen a sissy squat bench. I have a video that I'm working on. I've kind of got the rough draft sent to you. I need to polish that up and get it cleaned up and sent in. But essentially, it's one of the thick, heavy bands. You loop it around a solid base so they can hold you, and you loop it behind your legs, and you treat it the same way as you would a sissy squat. And I'm telling you, that's been probably one of the best quad exercises that it hurts to the point where you literally sit there and reevaluate, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing that I like about that is it's not loading up my spine, it's not loading up my hips. There is a little bit of tension on the hips and on the knees, but not to an extent where I can't do it.
Yeah.
So learning how to manipulate those aspects of each one of the lifts has been a huge
Yeah.
benefit. Same with bench press, chest exercises. I've added in some band work and some isometric holds for that, and it's been huge. It's been a staple over the past, I'd say, probably 3-4 months. And both of my training partners, I've seen a huge increase in not only strength but muscle mass and size. In all of us. I mean,
That's
it's
great.
been phenomenally ridiculous.
That's awesome. Jason, talk to us a little bit more about some of the isometric work you've been doing to rehab these injuries.
So one of the big things, I know I have an article out on Catch a Lift where I spoke about deep core strength, spinal strength and stability. One of the main staples that I will always argue to the day I die that is the most beneficial has been the Palloff press, because it works everything as it's supposed to work. I have a few variations within that training article, and I think that you've said that you've used those in the past.
Oh, I've used them in my training programs extensively, and we've sent out that program you're referring to, Jason. That's, if anybody wants to see the program, it's called Deep Core Training. It's on the Catch a Lift landing zone. It's a phenomenal program, and we sent it to a lot of our veterans, and they've had good success with it.
But that has helped with spinal stability. I really enjoy doing core, but I can't get down on the ground and do sit-ups for reps. I mean, it just wrecks my spine. So things like that have really paid off in recovering. Some of the other ones, obviously, deadlifts and rack pulls are phenomenal. Right now, I'm working through a phase of rack pulls instead of full-on deadlifts, just because with a deadlift you're initiating from a much lower stance, so the pull is a lot lower, so you have to
Yeah.
get down a little bit lower. So again, going back and reevaluating, okay, I can't do a deadlift, but I can do a rack pull, things like that.
Jason, how did you look at your goals during this time? Did you have to reevaluate them, or how did you kind of handle that?
Oh, for sure. Anytime that you're dealing with an injury, especially if you've been active and you've been, working out, and now, in my circumstance, I was looking at another spinal injury after I had been, highly active. Um, you have to sit back and say, okay, I'm no longer chasing that 300-pound bench press, or I'm no longer chasing that 350-pound squat.
Yeah.
Um, right now, I have to work on staying mobile, staying, controlling pain, controlling inflammation. One of the big things that I've also added in is doing a non-panted cardio walk. I know it sounds crazy, but just a non-panted cardio walk, just nice, easy, brisk, not running, not,
Yep.
walking fast. It does great with, cardiovascular health. It does great with, helping circulate, blood throughout the body to help aid in recovery. It helps with inflammation. So small things like that can have a huge impact. And I
Yeah.
mean, who doesn't have, 15 minutes out of their morning
Right.
or something where you can't just do a walk around the house or the block,
Yeah.
whatever you have. So that's been a huge help to me. Just those small things, it has really
Yeah.
paid off.
Yeah. And definitely echo that, and, encourage everyone to take that 15, 20-minute walk. It's so good for you physically, but also the mental component of it. It's a great time to kind of clear your head or get focused for the day. Jason, so a lot of our veterans obviously deal with injuries, chronic injuries, or even you know injuries that resurface from past injuries. um, what would kind of be your advice to them, or where would you tell them to kind of start if they're looking at their current training program, they're dealing with an injury? What would your advice be to them to kind of, where do they start?
Um, I've never backed away from doing the 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 classic compound lifts. So benching, squatting, deadlifting, all of that stuff I still do. Um, pull-ups. Pull-ups are a great one. Push-ups, planks, all those things that you think of as classic lifts. I never shy away from them. The one thing that I will say is that, one, you may not be able to go as heavy. That's for sure. If you're dealing with an injury, you have no business trying to pull 3, 4, 500 pounds on a deadlift. But what you can do is you can find different ways, different variations to help support that. And that's where it comes back with. Right now, I've had a huge push in reinforcing my training program with a lot of band work, honestly. Um, it's like we were talking about earlier, there is not a training component within my training that I don't use bands.
Yeah.
I've developed a way to do a banded pull up. Not classically, what you would think of as you loop it around the
Right.
pull up rack and you hook your feet in there.
Yep.
It's almost like a Superman. If you've ever done a Superman where you're laying on your belly and then you arch your back,
Yep.
and then you can pull your shoulders and elbows back. I do that with a band that's a little bit different, but it mimics the same muscles as you would in a pull up.
That's
So
awesome.
pairing that with, say, a rack pull, I can hit my entire back
Yeah.
in, you know 2 3 movements. So things like that. So getting very direct, getting very focused with your training program, and eliminating all the excess fluff that you don't necessarily need,
Yep.
and get down and find those exercises that you do need. And most of the time, and this is another point that I will argue, most of the exercises that you need to do are the ones you're not doing.
Yeah. This is true.
And
This is
and a
true.
lot of times, doctors will tell you, hey, don't do this, hey, don't do that. Um, and I, my opinion, I think a lot of times they're full of shit.
Yeah.
They're just worried about you doing more, so you're going to create more damage.
Yeah.
You can do these things safely. Squats. Another great squat movement is a kettlebell squat. You can do that. You can do that with a dumbbell. You can do body weight squats. I mean, they're brutal in themselves.
Yes.
You can do hip belt squats. Those are phenomenal if you're dealing with a lot of spinal issues. Hip belt is nothing more than a dip belt where you attach the weight to the on the chain. A lot of gyms don't have it, but you can stack up plates and you can do a dip belt squat that way. It's all about just finding those exercises that you can restructure and rework and make it fit to what you need. And that's been what I've done is every exercise that I have, I find a different way to do it if it causes pain.
Yeah. So Jason, as you know, a lot of our veterans have bands, and you've touched on a couple, great movements that, people should be doing, like the Palloff press, Spanish squat, that banded pull up. What would be a couple other movements that should kind of be on the top of people's radar, whether they are injured or not?
For sure, I've worked on I don't even know what to call it. It's a banded single arm. It's almost like a crossover. So you're taking it's like a single arm fly, but instead of stopping here at center line, I push it and drive it completely past center line, almost past my other shoulder, and I hold it for an isometric hold. Anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. I've added in doing reps either before or after. There's so many different ways that you can do it. Hand position does play a huge role in this one. So the more that you rotate your hand up, so if your hand is neutral like this, straight up and down, it's working more of the center chest. And the more that you rotate your palm up, it actually pushes the muscle here on the center line up, and I can feel it going all the way up here into my clavicle. It's been a phenomenal exercise. It's brutal. It's painful. It sucks. But a lot of lifters struggle with the upper part of the chest where you're trying to get those muscles to engage. And one huge benefit that I've seen is that in incorporating isometric holds in there, one, I'm not adding in a huge amount of volume in retrospect to what it is I'm doing with my program. But the isometric hold itself, it actually helps recruit more muscle fibers. It turns those muscle fibers on that you're not necessarily using. It's kind of like dormant.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is, your computer has a hard crash and you turn it off and everything has to reboot. That's what I'm doing with those muscles that I haven't used in however long, either because of injury or because I just haven't used them before, and it creates that fantastic mind muscle connection. So that crossed arm, that cross body isometric hold for the chest for me has been huge, because the more muscle fiber that you can recruit, guess what? The more the more weight you can lift.
Oh, totally.
And I mean, it's been huge. It's been huge for me and for the guys that I train with.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, this week I hit, and we were hitting 95-pound dumbbells for reps. I hit 250 for an incline bench press. I mean, you name it. I mean, I've just the muscle growth and the strength have just taken off like I couldn't have ever expected. And it's
great.
all by changing that one aspect.
Yeah.
I think another one, and I've been trying to figure out how to shoot this video. It's kind of a pain to do, but One of the other ones that I've actually incorporated in as far as banded exercises go is it's a shoulder complex. So it's like a shrug complex.
Okay.
So I have a band that I hook around my power rack, and I do a behind the back shrug, and immediately turn around and I do in front of the body shrug with the band, and then I do each side, left and right side. But the one thing that has made a huge difference is the angle of pull, because whenever you see somebody do a shrug, they're doing this with their
Yeah.
shoulders,
Yep.
and they've got like, I don't know, like 6 plates on a barbell, and they're just bouncing
Totally.
their shoulders like this. That's not how you do it. I don't care if anybody says it's not how you do it. So for
Yeah.
the band, it's almost like I lean out a little bit further and I'm pulling the shoulder up, and I'm trying to contract the my trap against the side of my neck as hard as I can, and I'll hit an isometric hold for 30 seconds on that,
Oof.
and then hit 20 or 30 reps, and then hit another 15-20 second iso hold, and I can feel it throughout my
Oh man,
thoracic
yeah.
spine, my cervical spine. It just, the whole shoulder girdle is just lit up, and it's 3 movements, and
That's
that's it.
awesome. Very cool. Very cool. So, what's interesting here, Jason, you went back down this path of injury. You were in just an extreme amount of pain. Movement was, very limited there for that period of time. And, I think it would have been very easy to, sit in that situation and be like, well, you know what, I'm screwed now. My progress is all gone. I'm going to end up starting back from square zero. And like you've told us about, you've gained an incredible amount of not only strength, but muscle growth during this period of, injury rehab, we'll call it. Um, could you kind of talk to veterans right now that are dealing, with an injury or a great amount of pain, and they feel like that? They feel like progress is going to stop, or they're going to end up starting back from zero.
Yeah, I know I've said this probably more than once in our coaches meeting. Um, we are always our own worst enemy. We will self-sabotage ourselves like
Oh yeah.
crazy. Um, and 9 times out of 10, it's an excuse. I could have used the excuse, like you said, that I'm in pain. Um, my progress is going to go down the drain. So I might as well just say, screw it.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to sit here and feel
Yep.
sorry for myself. While I recognize that there are veterans that do have pain, that you are dealing with these range of motion, mobility issues. You can't give up on yourself, because the absolute worst thing that you can ever do is go stagnant, is to sit there and do nothing. It's been proven by multiple case studies, multiple medical studies, that physical activity actually promotes uh, it promotes recovery. It promotes those muscles rehabilitating, and you got to think of it this way: is if you sit there and do nothing, you go stagnant, you start pounding down those cheeseburgers and the French fries and ice cream and all that stuff, you're going to add on weight. And as soon as you start adding on weight, you make your heart work harder. So there goes your cardiovascular system. Um, you know, Weight has a huge impact on joint mobility. So the more weight that you carry, the harder it is for you to move.
Yeah.
So which suck are you going to embrace the
Yeah.
most?
Right.
Which one? What's your choice? Are you going to suck it up and deal with it for a couple of weeks while you kind of get things ironed out, or are you going to suck it up and deal with it for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
You have to have that honest conversation with yourself. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. You're the only one that can do that. So while yes, you may have pain, you may have these issues, it's not going to stop you. You're still breathing. You're still 6 feet above ground.
Yep.
So you got to do something. You have to
Yeah.
make that choice. You can't sit there and let others dictate to you. You can't let the doctors tell you, hey, you need to sit here and do absolutely nothing. There's always something that you can do. even even if it's grabbing a band and knocking out some curls. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
different band variations out there. There's so many different things that you can do with a band, and I
Yeah.
promise you, you can make 10 pounds feel like 100 pounds real quick.
Oh, you can. You definitely can. But no, I agree with you. It's kind of one of those things sometimes, like, it's going to be hard either way. Like, choose your hard, be
Exactly.
brutally honest with yourself and choose the hard that you're going to go after. Before we get finished up, Jason, I want to talk to you about nutrition and kind of specifically as it relates to when you are dealing with an injury. Can you talk to us about reevaluating your nutrition and kind of food intake during a time of injury?
Um, as far as nutrition goes, especially whenever I mean, you see this. I mean, this is classical bodybuilding, 101. You have carb cycling, you have, people want to call it a bulking phase or a cutting phase, whatever you want to look at it. They're manipulating their carbohydrates, they're manipulating their fat and their protein. One thing that I would definitely say is don't skimp out on your protein because it's just common knowledge that we tend to undereat protein, and protein is that building block that helps keep and build muscle.
Yeah.
That's very, very important. Not saying that you want to go out there and down 4 or 5 cheeseburgers in a
Yeah.
row, but be smart with it. Lean out your carbohydrates a little bit, lean out your fat a little bit. Make sure that you're getting you know good quality protein. Not saying that you got to go out and spend $30 for steak every night or whatever, but make smart choices. Uh, there's a bunch of different carbs that you can choose over other ones. Spinach, cabbage, kale, phenomenal for carbohydrates. Green leafy uh, vegetables, phenomenal. I mean, you can eat an absolute ton of them and consume very little calories, but you get some good carbohydrate, you get good fiber, you get macronutrients and all that stuff, phytonutrients from it. The one thing that I would definitely say is eat for your activity level.
Yeah.
If you're coming from a high end energy workout, or a high energy time, and now you're kind of looking at, okay, I'm slowing down a little bit, I can't do as much. You need to look at reining back your carbohydrates or your calories a little bit, whether it's adjusting your carbohydrates or whether it's adjusting your fat. Take a look at that, and it's going to be one of those things where you got to play with it a little bit, and just kind of roll with it from there. But I would definitely say that whenever you go into a period like this, you have to make smart choices when it comes to eating. Now's not the time to sit there and say, well, I did good this week, so I'm going to go out and have an ice cream
Oh,
cone.
yeah.
You
Yep.
know, kind of one of those things.
Yep.
Be smart. Not saying that you got to cut everything out because I certainly, I've got kids, I've got family. We celebrate, we do holidays and that sort of stuff. But just be very, very,
Yeah.
cautious of how you're eating because that will definitely sneak up on you real quick.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of fighting that weight gain factor again, and you're kind of eliminating that hard work and that progress that you got before you got to an injury. And while you're recovering, the best thing that you can do, definitely hands down, is making sure that you're getting in those good nutrients, which is going to help promote recovery. It's going to help promote getting you back into the gym or getting you back, doing whatever activity that you enjoy doing better a lot quicker than if you're sitting there smashing out McDonald's, smashing out Hardee's, all that
Yeah.
stuff that we love to eat.
Yep. Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree with you more there. And the only thing I would add is, something else that you could implement there, if you're not already doing it, it would be a good time, to track what you are eating, at least for a couple weeks, just to kind of help you find kind of almost a new maintenance level for your activity that you're doing. and just, to keep you more mindful. Because like Jason said, right, you don't need to cut everything out, or you can enjoy a holiday, or a night with your family, but, just be mindful of it. It'll definitely help on the back end. I've got one more question I want to swing out to you, Jason, about Catch a Lift. So, we're so grateful to have you back on here, again, and sharing your knowledge with us. What does it mean to you to be a Catch a Lift coach?
Honestly, I mean, to be a coach with Catch a Lift is I take it very, very seriously. It is very Catch a Lift is very near and dear to my heart. Always has been and always will be. It allows me to continue to serve soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors. It allows me to continue to serve. Again, just because you take that uniform off doesn't mean that you're done serving, and that's what Catch Lift allows me to do. So it means the world to me to be able to help other veterans through some of the experiences that I've had and some of the experiences that other veterans have had. We're all that we have. Nobody knows exactly what we go through except for those who have been in our shoes. And unless you have that perspective, it's hard to sit there and say, okay, well, do this. So having that intimate knowledge of what it's like to recover from an injury, what it's like to deal with PTSD in everyday life, and then sitting back there and saying, okay, well, I didn't make an excuse today to go lift, so that means that other veterans need that same message. They need that same honesty. I'm out here putting in work every single day. You can too. So it's kind of that tough love, that brotherhood that you have, in the military. It carries over, and that's what Catch a Lift allows me to do. Is it allows me to continue to serve, and that to me is what it is, a huge honor, and what it means to be a coach with Catch a Lift is just continue to serve.
Wonderfully said, Jason. I couldn't agree more. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another new episode. Thank you again, Jason, for sharing your knowledge and your light with us today. We certainly appreciate you. Thank you to ID Technology for your continued support of all things Catch a Lift. Thank you to ClearBridge for your support of Catch a Lift. Thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nasiri for your continued support of this podcast and all the incredible work you all do on the back end to make it happen. And to the entire CAL team, thank you. Until next week, keep it real and stay CAL strong.